Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're all doing well and keeping safe on this Tuesday. In today's episode, Dybala links to Chelsea in the summer. A pretty shock link, to be honest. We'll get into that. The whole forward situation, Chelsea trying to sign a striker this summer. Also, defensive midfield, another priority position for me this summer that Chelsea need to strengthen, and another big target from AC Milan that I think could be worth looking into. And finally, reflecting on the Chelsea career of Diego Costa. But before we get into any of that good stuff, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. A big couple of days coming up on the channel regarding Chelsea. Of course, tomorrow, that massive Champions League second leg tie against Atletico Madrid. We're going to have my preview out for the game later today, so make sure you stay tuned. We're going to have that game. It really is for Chelsea's season. I think for Tuchel as well. It's a big night for Chelsea because I think if we can get through that game, I think it'll mean a lot to the club. I think for the first time in 7 years, getting past the round of 16 in the Champions League, it'd be absolutely massive. But some recent stories regarding transfers. We've heard so much about Erling Haaland being linked to Chelsea this summer. Another attacking player being linked is Paulo Dybala from Juventus. This is from France Football, cited by Sport Witness that Chelsea and Tottenham are potential contenders to sign Paulo Dybala from Juventus this summer. Spurs and the Blues will be willing to spend between 50 million and 55 million euros to have Dybala. I don't buy this. I mean, Tottenham were apparently in for Dybala. I think it was it last summer? I think it was the summer before, maybe. They were really in for him in the final days of the transfer window. It never materialised. That would have been a big move. He has been one of the players in recent years, especially in European football, that has been linked to massive moves over the summer, like many top talents are. I just don't think this makes a lot of sense. I don't really buy this story. I think in terms of the injury record, I mean, Dybala's currently injured. He's been missing from Juventus' first team for a long time now, and he's had injury problems over a number of seasons. I also just think the type of forward that Dybala is, I mean, this is something I think we have to get into in terms of where Chelsea are going under Thomas Tuchel, at least for next season. What type of forward are we looking for? I think at the base level, we're looking for someone to put away chances, because Chelsea as a clinical side, I mean, we haven't really had that since a man I'm going to be speaking about later in today's episode, and what we really need, and also the physical profile and what Tuchel wants in a forward. Because I think the profile forward that Kai Havertz currently is operating in that role for the previous two games against Everton and Leeds, playing quite well against Everton, being a real big influence in that game and sort of seeing the fluidity of that front three. Are we looking for a type of player like Kai Havertz who can float in and out of position, can be quite versatile in his positioning? Or are we looking for a more natural number 9 like an Erling Haaland? I think that's something to discuss as well. I don't really buy this, and I think there'll be a lot of names being linked because Erling Haaland is such a big name, and I think Chelsea, there is a massive race on there to sign him. Can Chelsea actually get that deal done given the fee that's been reported in recent days? Absolutely ridiculous. I think about 150 million being touted. How true that is, I mean, you think about last summer with Kai Havertz, how massive the fee was being reported, and Chelsea negotiated it down. I do think it's interesting listening to someone like Matt Law recently saying that it's not going to be like Kai Havertz. Chelsea are not going to be able, especially Raiola, to bring that fee down. So then you're thinking about alternatives. If Chelsea are persistent on signing a new striker this summer, who else could that be to a decent level to actually improve our side next season? That's something I want to ask you guys, and also Dybala, just in terms of whether it's true or not, whether, how relevant this story is. I want to know your opinions on him, because I think he has been an interesting player over recent years. Given the type of forward he is, I'm not quite sure he adds anything we don't currently have and could suffer from similar issues. And I also think just the Premier League, what it's required to be a great Premier League striker, I don't know if Dybala, now with his injury record, would be a smart investment for anyone. Let me know your opinions on this story and the forward situation in the comments below. Second is defensive midfield. I spoke about Aurelien Tchouameni from Monaco that apparently Chelsea are interested in. I looked into the player last week. Please go and watch that episode because it was interesting. And it's interesting, this position, to me, because I think it's something Chelsea have to prioritise. I think for a number of reasons. I think DM, if number one, we haven't replaced Nemanja Matic when we let him go in 2017 to Man United. And funny enough, Matic, who I felt in his career, I felt we sort of got the best years of him. I actually think he's really improved Man United recently. I've been really impressed with Matic's performances. So that player's not done, and it seems like a massive mistake we let Matic go, especially given the fact that Bakayoko didn't work after we signed him from Monaco. And really since then, there hasn't been a natural DM in this squad. You could look at N'Golo Kante. You can look at the fact Jorginho came in as sort of a regista under Maurizio Sarri. So that natural sort of DM that can break up play and get it forward. I mean, we haven't really had that type of player. And I think that's caused Frank Lampard, Maurizio Sarri, probably less so Sarri given what he demands from his system and wanting Jorginho there, a very specific type of player to fit in his system, especially Lampard. I think to a certain extent now Thomas Tuchel in that double six, I think we're lacking someone. And I think if Chelsea and Tuchel want to go to a back four and start to implement a 4-3-3 next season, and the player I'm going to talk about here, Franck Kessie, Chelsea have midfielder Tuchel dreams of in line of sight, can offer player a rich contract and more. It is said the Ivory Coast international was one of the German manager dreams of bringing to Stamford Bridge, and a realistic route to making that happen was available to him. That came through for Kyle Tomori, who is currently on loan at Milan and one of Kessie's teammates, whom the Serie A side can bring in permanently if they spend 28 million euros. And there's another great article here about Kessie, his career, what he means to AC Milan currently in Serie A, how well they're doing. I watched them against Man United in the Europa League, and Kessie should have had a goal on his own. It shouldn't have been ruled out last week, but he really impressed me. That whole AC Milan team, including Tomori, really impressed me. I think the energy, the young talent that team has, how it could develop over the coming years too, if they can keep that squad together, I think there's a lot of potential there, especially in the Europa League this season. Got the second leg against Man United, got that away goal. Kessie's another one of these players that I think Chelsea could be going in for. If Declan Rice is completely off the table, which seems to be now, if Chelsea are not willing to spend that amount of money, to some extent I can understand, even though I think it would be a brilliant signing for Chelsea, and I still think that'd be my number one target in relation to a guy who knows the Premier League. I just think he's a brilliant player and has performed brilliantly on a consistent basis as a young talent for West Ham this season, who've overachieved. He's been a massive part of that midfield, and I could only imagine what Declan Rice could do alongside N'Golo Kante in a double six, but I don't think that's going to happen now. I think there's too much PR noise around Declan Rice, what he meant for the last regime at Chelsea, so I think we have to look elsewhere, and I think Kessie could be another option here. He also talked about the midfielder's ability not only on the ball but in terms of stepping up as a leader in the absence of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who's such a big character for AC Milan this season. It also cites how Milan's midfielder has run over 11,000 kilometers per game on average this season, a massive amount, and the energy he brings to that midfield, which is such a key area in the modern game. And I do think what Chelsea lack is power in midfield, the ability, as I already said, to shift to a back four. I like the idea, and this is the same with Tchouaméni to a lesser extent. Tchouaméni, sort of not an obvious signing that many people will know the name of. That's sort of the profile player we speak about when we're talking about Chelsea transfers, as we speak about with Erling Haaland, other players too, players that people know, especially in the Premier League and in European football. I think Tchouaméni, I think Kessie, I think there are other names across Europe that I do look at. Even in the Premier League, I mean, in terms of the most reliable sources surrounding Chelsea, it doesn't appear at the moment that defensive midfield is that key an area for Chelsea. In terms of recruitment, it's constantly striker talk, whether that's Erling Haaland, someone else, and as well recently centre-back and even goalkeeper too. I mean, for me, it is a little bit silly that we aren't prioritising this position, because it feels to me to be the most glaring hole. I do think at the moment, Tuchel, the way he's setting up this team, is he's being quite cautious in midfield, because I think he understands the limitations of some of his midfielders, especially Jorginho, who's sitting very deep at the moment. I do wonder if you could bring in a player who does have more mobility in that area. Will that improve Chelsea's game defensively, which has been brilliant recently, but also offensively, which I think is the key area Chelsea need to get better at moving forward under Thomas Tuchel, especially going into next season if we want to seriously challenge for a Premier League title again. And I also think our ability in central midfield to play balls through to our attackers is a key problem creatively too, and I don't think that's just down to a Fabregas type player. I think in the past we've seen Nemanja Matic operate really well as that player who can play a simple pass in between the lines to our attackers. I think that's what we're lacking at the moment. So many times, I stressed this on Twitter yesterday. I probably put a tweet up which got a lot of interaction yesterday, of one of my biggest frustrations at the moment is when we have possession in midfield, our two deep midfielders, whether that's Kovacic, Kante, Jorginho, we see Kai Havertz or Timo Werner make a darting run into space and they never receive the pass. That's what needs to happen for me on a more consistent basis, because I think that's where we're seeing some of the attacking struggles at the moment. Let me know your opinions on Kessie, because there is that connection there with Fikayo Tomori. You could see a swap deal happening here, which could be beneficial for Chelsea, even if I think losing Tomori would be a mistake. But there are other names as well. Tchouaméni I spoke about last week. Any other names you think in this DM role that Chelsea could prioritise in the summer as a great option to strengthen our midfield for next season? Let me know in the comments below. And finally, I had to talk about this story. I wasn't actually going to speak about this story until this morning when this article popped up, an amazing article from The Athletic, very much ahead of course, tomorrow's game with Atletico Madrid, but it's all about the career of Diego Costa. It's Liam Toomey and Simon Johnson with this amazing piece. you have to go and read it. You have to. If you subscribe to The Athletic, please go and do so, because it is an amazing piece surrounding Diego Costa and his 3-year stint at Chelsea Football Club. It's got some amazing stories about Diego, the antics of Diego, the brilliance of Diego Costa. Please go and read it. Link in the description box below. But I loved reading it because Diego Costa is one of my favourite players to ever play for Chelsea. In terms of like my favourite players, I think JT, Franck is my favourite player, but I obviously look at JT, Didier, but I think Diego, just personally for me, comes pretty close in terms of what he meant when he was playing for the club. I just adored this guy. I think we lack so much of Diego in this current team. There have been so many occasions over recent years since he's left, and I think there's so much that gets spoke about with Diego, with his character, with his confrontational nature, which was part of what made him such a brilliant player for Chelsea. But I think I think the talk of his character and the antics on the pitch, positive or negative for you, depending, usually negative for an opposing team and fan, when watching Diego Costa play for Chelsea. He was just a world-class footballer. He was a world-class striker. I think his all-round game was absolutely exceptional. Watching him live, the way he'd hold up the ball, his intelligence of movement, some of the goals he scored were just absolutely wonderful. So he was used as a battering ram at times, but I think using and putting that tag onto him, I think dismisses and sort of denigrates how good of a player technically he was as well. I mean, in terms of stats, he was one of the best finishers we've seen at Chelsea in recent years. And I think what this team currently lacks, what this club has lacked in recent years, is a maverick, is someone who goes on the pitch. And it sounds very simple, but just that fight, just that connection with the crowd. I think there's something lacking at the moment with Chelsea in certain situations where a player who is clinical in the final third, we absolutely lack that at the moment, and that's why Haaland is being talked about, because we haven't replaced that since Diego has left. Probably one of the biggest departures we've had. I mean, I think up there with Eden Hazard, because Hazard was a world-class talent. He really was. He was astonishing for Chelsea, but I think we've lacked the goal threat of Diego for a number of years, and I think all the problems we have currently in attack, or at least that awkwardness in attack, I think will be solved with a player of Diego's quality. And I just think the club should be looking for a player of this nature. How many Diego type players? I think Diego is a unique talent. He really is, and a unique personality. You don't find many personalities like Diego Costa in football. He's an absolute madman. I'd love to see a reality TV show just on Diego Costa in his personal life. I think I could spend much longer speaking about Diego Costa and what he brought to Chelsea. Some of my favourite moments from him, the fact that he sort of spearheaded 2 title-winning teams, and you really hope Chelsea can find another talisman like him, because other than Didier Drogba in the modern era at Chelsea, it's between Didier and I think Diego Costa comes anywhere close. Of course, was only here for 3 years. Did divide opinion. I'm pretty sure for some of you guys, the way he left the club will annoy some people. But I think for me, the positives absolutely outweighed the negatives in his career at Chelsea, and a wonderful talent. Please go and read this piece. Let me know more of your favourite memories from Diego Costa in the comments below. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.